start?
Anna?
You're ready.
Ready? Are we on?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Planning Commission. And we have a quorum. And we'll approve the agenda and the minutes from the April 13th Planning Commission meeting.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Listed as A, David Avery, request for a conditional use permit to allow the dog boarding facility with a maximum of 10 dogs. Neva, do you want to present this case?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In 2019, the Averys received an interim use permit to operate a home business, Rocky Knoll Dog Boarding and Daycare. At that time, Land Services determined this application was best suited to the home business definition due to the scale of the operations and the customer service aspect of the dog boarding business. The 2019 interim use permit capacity was conditioned to allow 3 dogs boarded, and the Averys had 2 pet dogs in their house. The business has been successful, and the applicants would like to increase their capacity to have 9 dogs boarded. The applicants calculate that they've turned away 42% of the boarding requests due to the limitation of boarding capacity. Due to the expansion of the proposal, Land Services determined that this proposal to be best defined as a kennel. The expanded boarding space will be located in the existing garage. This new location will bring the boarding kennel closer to the primary home. The application identifies that the new garage kennel location will provide better insulation to benefit noise reduction. Additionally, trees are to be planted on the west side of the driveway and parking area. This property is located in the Forest Agriculture Residential District, non-shoreland. Kennels are a defined conditional use in this zoning district. The Avery parcel is 5 acres and otherwise compliant with the FAR3 zoning criteria. Distances from the kennel to nearest residences average over 1,000 feet, adequately meeting guidelines for the Cook County Kennel Ordinance. Special criteria for kennel operations are outlined in the zoning ordinance under section 10.06D. This request meets minimum requirements for the kennel guidelines. Land Services evaluated the well setback and consulted the Minnesota Department of Health and determined that this request meets the state well code outlined in Minnesota state rules. I've included the standards for reviewing this criteria as outlined in ordinance. Staff recommendations for the Planning Commission is to address the following items during their review of the proposal and or consider for conditions if approved. 1, the maximum number of dogs cared for in the boarding facility shall not exceed 9. Any modification of that number shall require an amended CUP. The permit owner shall be responsible for all noise or disturbance abatement on a year-round, around-the-clock basis. Violation of permit conditions shall invalidate the permit. Any signage associated with the kennel shall comply with Cook County sign ordinance, and sale or transfer of the property title shall invalidate the permit. Many of those conditions were similar to what was on the interim use permit. 13 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners. Land Services has received 1 comment from Wayne Henschey at 1421 County Road 14 in favor of the request. At the time of this narrative preparation, we did not receive any other correspondence.
Thank you. Is someone here representing David Avery? Yes. Can you step to the microphone? State your name and address.
I'm David Avery. I'm at 1471 County Road 14.
Thank you. Do you have anything you wish to add to the zoning comments?
Not really, no.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone that would wish to offer support for the request that wishes to speak? You can step forward. And state your name and address, please.
I'm Lawrence Doe, 1408, 4582 North Road and Hovland.
Okay.
And the reason I spoke up is I didn't realize that David was here, but we have used the kennel, and our 2 dogs have boarded there, and they're wonderful. I think it's a great opportunity. We use the local vet, and there's no other boarding that was stated in the county. So we are really happy to find that facility, and we've been exceedingly happy with the results.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in support? Is anyone that wishes to speak with opposition to the request? Step forward. Okay, we'll close it to the public comment. And we'll speak as the planning commission. Do any of you have comments?
Seems like
I
a,
move to approve it.
Anyone else have, Tim?
Madam Chair, thank you. Just because of the fact that we're wearing the masks and everything today, it would be good if when a motion is made that the person speak their name out so that we can have that on the record.
Okay. All right. Anyone care to make a motion?
I do.
He just did. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Mike's made the motion, Jerry seconded.
Yeah.
All those in favor, or any, so motion made, any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may, is there any conditions attached with this motion?
Do you wish to add conditions to, do you wish to adopt the conditions offered by the planning and zoning staff?
No, I think he's handling it right.
I don't think you understand the question. Typically, we include the conditions with the permit that are listed as possibilities, and that goes with the motion.
Okay, I make a motion, we approve it with the conditions listed.
Okay,
I'll resume my second. I had assumed that, and it should have been stated, though.
okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to make one comment, is that his record in the past in operating this kennel has been tremendous, good success, doing everything right. It looks even better for the future, and I may need you in the next year.
Okay. All right,
I've heard nothing but good stuff about him.
okay.
I've got a quick question for Dave, was just to make sure you're comfortable with these 5 conditions?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor, state your name and vote, starting with Mike. Do you want to vote for the motion?
I do.
Aye.
Aye.
Jerry, aye.
Adam, I.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, we'll move to Peter and Amy James, conditional use permit to allow a conversion of the house and former motel lobby into 2 long-term rental units. And Neva, would you care to present that, please?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. This request is to convert the existing home and former Wedgewood Motel lobby, office space, and laundry room into 2 long-term rental units. This conditional use permit, if approved, would bring a total of 5 long-term rental units to the property. In 2014, the former 10-unit motel was converted into 3 long-term rental apartments, 1 one-bedroom unit, and 2 two-bedroom units. Since that time, the applicants have been living in the 3-bedroom home and detached former motel areas. The applicants are planning to move and convert their former living arrangements into 2 long-term apartments. The 2 long-term apartments will be created from the existing infrastructure. For zoning considerations, this property is within the RCR zone district, which has identified 2 to 4 family dwellings in a single structure as a conditional use. During other RCR zone district requests, especially those pertaining to overnight accommodations, a common concern has typically been focused on parking areas and septic capacity. However, this CUP effectively represents a downsizing of land use given the reduction in units, and as such, those parameters will likely not prove problematic. Long-term rental units are in high need in Cook County. The applicant has also identified several sections of the land use guide plan which supports their request. Please refer to the application materials to review this information. Again, I outlined the criteria for reviewing these permits from section 10.05 of the Cook County zoning ordinance. If considered for approval, the following conditions may be applied to this conditional use permit. 1, all necessary permits shall be obtained prior to structural modification. And 2, the property shall comply with Minnesota Rules 7080 and Cook County environmental health requirements. We sent out 36 letters of notification to adjacent property owners, and one comment was received by Chris Skildum from 1681 East Highway 61 in favor of the request.
Okay, thank you. Is someone here to represent Peter and Amy James?
I am Peter James. My address 128 Will Point Trail in Grand Marais.
Thank you.
Better? Okay.
Do you wish to add to the comments?
No, I think it's a real good summary. I think many people know my wife and I both divided our time between up the trail and in town while my mother-in-law lived with us here in town. We both retired from full-time work and will be up the trail full-time. So the idea was to convert that ancillary space that was created when the motel was created for the lobby, motel office, the oversized laundry, into a one-bedroom apartment separate from the house.
Okay. Does anyone wish to support the proposal? If so, step forward and state your name, please.
I'm Mike Carlson. I'm at 1655 East Highway 61, immediately next door to the property. In fact, we have some shared easements. And I'm perfectly satisfied with the idea. I
Okay,
approve.
thank you. Anyone else wish to support it? Does anyone wish to express opposition to the proposal? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss it as a board.
Well, I drive by your place on a regular basis, sometimes several times a day. I've watched it over the years as you've worked on it and made improvements and fixed things up, changed the old units. This seems to be an appropriate and proper culmination of what you've been doing, and I think that it's a valuable addition to the county. Very small in some sense, but big in others. So obviously, I think I'm speaking in favor of this.
Okay, anyone else wish to comment, have questions?
I think it fills a much great need, even though just a little bit, but every little bit
Every little
helps.
bit helps. Okay, anyone else? Mike, or,
I agree. I'm
okay.
in favor.
Are we ready for a motion?
I would motion to approve with the conditions 1 and 2 as written.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further Charlie made the motion. Who second?
I'll second.
Jerry second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mike?
Charlie, aye.
Charlie? Aye.
Jerry, aye.
Adam, I.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the next proposal on the agenda is Paul Stucker, a conditional use permit to allow a cooperative resort and recreation area with livestock. Neva, would you care to present that, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This will take me just a moment, so I'll try to take a couple of breaths. This request is a conditional use permit to allow the cooperative resort and recreational area with livestock at 5089 and 5093 North Road in Hovland. Background, I just wanted to amend the staff narrative here to clarify that the applicants originally reached out to Land Services on April 26th to initiate the CUP process. Our office did not reach out to them first. Shortly after that contact, the applicants came in to meet with me to discuss the conditional use permit process and how to best describe this proposed use. The applicants were advised that without the conditional use permit, the proposed activities were not permitted. Unknown to Land Services, the applicants did proceed to host a theater group in late May. Just before Memorial Day, this artist residency came to the zoning administrator's attention. The applicants were notified that they were in violation of the zoning ordinance and needed to address this noncompliance immediately. The $500 after-the-fact fee was applied. The applicants met with the zoning administrator and explained that this group was connected with a Minnesota Arrowhead Regional Arts Council grant, and a final performance was to be held at Hovland Town Hall. After looking for and not finding alternative accommodations, the group left and canceled the event, which now brings the property into compliance with the zoning ordinance. Project details. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit on behalf of the Tamarack Land Cooperative, which purpose is to provide affordable and equitable access for people and organizations to 40 acres of land in Hovland, Minnesota, by managing and maintaining it as a community asset. The applicants are proposing 5 specific elements to their request. The first is the cooperative member stays. This is the core of the proposed use request. As described by the applicant in their application, cooperative members would pay a monthly or annual usage fee to grant them full use of the property while on site. There will be 3 full-time resident members, which includes Mr. Stuker, the applicant, 6 members staying 50 or less nights per year, and 10 members staying 14 or less nights per year. The applicants have described this as this user model to provide equitable access to stay and recreate in the area, while also building a community of people with shared values. The total full-time equivalent of occupancy with the cooperative member stay model comes to approximately 4.2 full-time residents. This is the 3 full-time members and 1.2 full-time equivalent of the other 16 cooperative members. The second part is artist residencies, a maximum of 10 residencies per year, which hosts individuals and groups up to 12 people. The third part is vacation rental. The fourth part is public events, and the applicants would like to host events targeted to the Hovland and greater Cook County community. These events may be connected with the artist residencies or be standalone events. The application estimates these events would not likely exceed 5 per year. And then a chicken flock, a backyard flock of birds for egg laying, or seasonal broiler flock, not to exceed 50 birds. The total occupancy of this request can be evaluated by the total proposed lodging units. I have a breakdown in the staff narrative as a table. Basically, the barn house, yurt, tea house, and the 4 tent sites would total to a maximum occupancy of 20 people total. I went over this with the applicant, and they also agree that this would be the total cap of people to stay at the property at any one time, although rare to have that many people. The existing septic system on the lot is for the existing barn house, which was designed and installed for 500 gallons per day, or 6 people. Any additional flow is required to be designed and installed by a certified and licensed septic designer and installer. The existing septic is designed for 6 people, therefore any additional people require septic designers to come on site and make sure that's adequate. Please see the enclosed memo from Mitch Everson on this. The application states that events will be focused indoors or several hundred feet from adjacent properties. Please refer to the maps on page 6 to see the surrounding development and zone districts. The application does not include details regarding what facilities would support events. Additional parking space, sanitary facilities, potable water, and noise are some items that may be addressed by the Planning Commission. Zoning considerations. The character of this locality is remotely located cabins, houses, and hunting shacks. The property is within the R1 single-family zone district with abutting properties to the north and west in the FAR2 zone district. This property is also within the shoreland area of the Flute Reed River. The conditional use application is eligible for consideration based on the criteria listed in the zoning ordinance, section 10.03D, which acknowledges that any uses not expressly identified within the ordinance may, at the discretion of the county, be processed as a conditional or interim use. The Cook County zoning ordinance does not have a specific defined use for these proposed activities under the conditional use permit application, therefore, such as cooperative or artist residency. In meeting with the applicants to review their proposal, Land Services worked with the applicants to develop this terminology in an attempt to capture the nature of the overnight lodging activities as well as the cooperative membership structure of the organization. The zoning ordinance defines resort as a lodging facility under single ownership containing 2 or more individual sleeping rooms, suites, or cabins used primarily for providing accommodations to pay for periods of less than 30 days. The cooperative resort is to further clarify that this is not a traditional resort, rather there is often but not exclusively an element of cooperative membership involved. Guests staying at the property, whether through the cooperative member stays, the artist residency, or vacation rental, will be staying and recreating on the property for a period of less than 30 days. The nature of the use is most similar to what the use at a resort would reflect. It bears mentioning that vacation rental does not require a conditional use permit approval. Vacation rental is a permitted use in the R1 zone district. The applicants included it to provide a comprehensive view of the overall proposed use. Resorts are not listed as a conditional use in this district. Since this is not a commercially zoned property, the resort standards of the zoning ordinance don't apply. The applicant has identified numerous items in the land use guide plan in support of the Tamarack Land Cooperative. Please refer to the enclosed application for additional details. The application identifies several additional steps the applicant has taken to improve the land and property. Land has most recently been vacant for several years and has fallen into a state of disrepair. Since purchasing the property in 2019, efforts have been made to clean up trash, rehabilitate structures, and begin conservation work with the DNR and Soil and Water Districts. Again, I outlined from the zoning ordinance, section 10.01, which does acknowledge that conditional use permits may be processed as an interim use if that's decided, as well as section 10.05 of the ordinance for the criteria of how to evaluate this request. Staff recommendations. This is a multifaceted request proposing a unique shared land use model. In evaluating a conditional use permit request, the criteria outlined in 10.05 should be used in determining whether this request meets the standards set in the ordinance. Consideration should be given as to whether the proposed use will cause issues with anticipated traffic congestion, population density, noise, or other considerations involving public health, safety, or general welfare. The applicants have been responsive throughout the application process and have responded appropriately by rectifying the after-the-fact situation. Land Services recognizes that the applicants did begin hosting an artist residency prematurely due to the pre-existing grant funding, but have taken steps, including paying the after-the-fact fee, to bring this application to the Planning Commission and County Board with the property in full compliance to demonstrate their willingness and ability to meet county rules. It would not be appropriate to deny this application solely based on the after-the-fact aspect of this request. The R1 zone district has a 2-acre minimum lot size. The proposed use of this 40-acre parcel, even at the maximum occupancy of 20 people, would have a lower density than if the property was platted into conforming 2-acre parcels. Concerns and opposition have been submitted by community members regarding this request. Neighborhood opposition alone does not constitute a reason for denial. In addition to setting conditions to mitigate potential issues, the Planning Commission and County Board may also consider an interim use approval to provide a period of time for the use to be permitted, after which a conditional use or another interim use permit could be applied for. The events component of the request seems to be the most potentially disruptive of the proposed uses. If events do not seem a reasonable use for the property, as mentioned in some public comments, the Hovland Town Hall may be an appropriate alternative. The Minnesota Department of Health licenses and inspects lodging establishments in Minnesota. Some of the public comments express concerns that are under the purview of the lodging license. These include building egress, structural stability, drinking water quality, mechanical plumbing installations, etc. Staff recommends the Planning Commission address the following items during their review of the proposal and/or consider for conditions if approved. I have listed these out. I suggested some quiet hours, occupancy. One thing I wanted to note is that the maximum occupancy of 6 people should only be allowed in the barn house until the septic gets expanded. The current septic system wouldn't be serving the other occupancy buildings. Parking should also be clarified so it's not congested, causing issues, lighting, noise, and signage. I did reach out to the Cook County attorney, Molly Hicken, to kind of understand the cooperative nature and what laws and rules would apply to that. So in the state of Minnesota, there's a law that any organization that demonstrates or displays themselves as a cooperative must actually be filed as a cooperative with the state. And I have reached out to the applicant, and he said that they have been filed as a cooperative, and I'm going to leave it to him to explain that further. I think for our purposes, it's important to know who's responsible for the property and tied to this application to carry that out. As far as the public comment goes, we mailed out 23 letters of notification to adjacent property owners. Land Services did receive 9 comments at the time of the narrative preparation. There were 3 comments in support, 2 comments with specific concerns, and then 4 comments that were opposed to the application. I did receive 1 comment letter after the comment deadline, but it's not included because it was submitted after the comment deadline. And that is all I have for you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is anyone here who will represent Paul Stucker?
My name is Paul Stucker. I reside at 5089, 5093 North Road in Hovland.
Okay. And do you have things to add to the planning?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Would it be acceptable to remove my mask to give remarks, or
Okay, she's the closest.
if you're good with it?
It's easier to hear.
Yeah. All right.
And you may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening to the Planning Commission, and thank you for your consideration of this conditional use permit. First, I just want to say how excited I am to present this project to you. While the application is under my name, and I'll be speaking this evening, it's important for me to acknowledge that there are a number of folks who have come along with me on this journey so far. So I'll be presenting our proposal for all of us, and I'm deeply indebted to all their hard work and innovation in coming up with this creative and thoughtful project. We're really thrilled what this county has to offer and our little space within it. So next, I'd like to just give a little bit of background on how my collaborators and I have gotten to now. So I purchased the land in 2019, and I started a small working group of folks that were interested in utilizing the land in some sort of arts residency type way. 2019 saw us come up periodically and start to acquaint ourselves with the property. It was pretty rough at that point. Lots of items and trash left by the previous folks, no potable water, no hot water, no electricity, the heat was out. So I moved up full-time in March 2020 with Ross Orenstein and Margaret Johnson, who are here as well. And we immediately set to getting the place livable and ours. The steering committee's plan kept evolving, and it changed a lot, especially with the realization that Ross and Margaret were interested in staying here for the long haul. So lots of folks came to visit that first year, interested in what we were up to, and to escape the pressure cooker of COVID city life. During that time, the property organically started to show us what it had to offer. The buildings are definitely unusual. The barn house has a big open floor plan with 4 bedrooms right off a central hallway. The chapel, as we call it, it's a large, open, multi-purpose space with a stunning vaulted wood ceiling. And the pole barn, or garage, sometimes we call it, it ironically has the nicest poured slab in the whole property. So it's a really interesting site that lends itself to, some sort of programmatic vision, in my opinion. And it would be strange for a single family to ever want to purchase it, and I suspect that's why it was on the market for over 4 years before I came along. So throughout 2020 and 2021, we continued developing this idea of the Tamarack Land Cooperative. So members of our initial steering committee, some members of our initial steering committee left the project, new people emerged. And it's definitely always been a little bit of a horse and cart scenario in terms of when was the right time to reach out to land services. We needed to try some ideas and have enough of a sense of what we wanted to propose to you all. And it became clear to me as time went on that there could possibly be aspects emerging that required some sort of conditional use. And what really kicked us in the butt to start the process was this theater group and the event that we wanted to host. So Fox and Beggar Theatre is a performance company. They're based out of Minneapolis. And last year they launched their first family-friendly touring show at Harbor Park, actually, in Grand Marais. And they perform on this incredible 26-foot box truck that folds out into a stage. They're a really great bunch of people. And I already had some personal connections to the company's director. And we had been in conversation over the winter about how to bring a show back to Cook County. And so given our developing space, their crew seemed like a great fit for the project. As you can imagine, it's not easy to find a space for a big truck like that, 12 company members just anywhere. And we felt really excited about bringing them up north, giving them space to work and helping present a show. As Neva mentioned, we had a $5,000 grant from the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council to help fund the presentation of that show, and also to co-present a Hovland resident, Shannon Crossbear, to perform with Fox and Beggar that evening. So with all this in motion, moving a little faster than we expected, we reached out to Land Services and have been working with Neva since late April. Because of our work with her, we actually decided to move that event to the Hovland Town Hall, which we're realizing more and more is a great tool to have in the toolbox. Unfortunately, because the group was not able to complete their residency before the weekend, we had to cancel the show. And I take that on board and apologize for that. We're really committed to being in accordance with the county and with our neighbors. So I think that was an instance of having the cart before the horse. And that pretty much brings us to the present moment. So there are now 3 of us that live there full-time, Ross, Margaret, and myself, and a few other members that represent the steering committee turned pilot board of directors. I feel my application and NEVA staff report paints an accurate description of our proposed use. I won't belabor the details now. I'm happy to address them should any members of the commission like clarification, but I'll just briefly highlight the 5 components. So cooperative member stays. Those are our resident members and also non-resident members. These are folks who pay in to the cooperative, help manage and maintain the site. So I think it's important to make a clarification there in how un-timeshare-like that is, even though that's an easy comparison to draw. You know, a timeshare, you pay in, you come up for your 2 weekends a year, you leave, you don't really think about the place. Here, you become part of the governance structure and you have an ongoing investment in how we interact with the land and the neighborhood. And these folks are, you know, generally targeted towards people who would not otherwise be able to afford property in Cook County or even to come pay for an Airbnb or a VRBO. Second component, the arts residency. I realize that's something that makes a lot of sense to me, but is not necessarily familiar to everyone. So the focus of that is to give artists, you know, time and space to focus on their work. Life is busy, and so being able to take time aside and really focus in on what you're doing is what we're going for there. Some of those would be subsidized, some of those would be for a fee. It would typically look like 1 or 2 artists at a time. So Fox and Beggar is sort of an outlier in that sense and is not necessarily the best representation of the kind of programming we would run typically. And I think, you know, looking at the property, the chapel particularly recommends itself to that programming, to use it as a studio space. Third, vacation rental. As Neva said, that's not actually a conditional use, so we would be able to do that regardless. But it's our lowest priority. Really, we would look at when we have availability after those first 2 items and use the possibility of vacation rental to help make financial ends meet. Fourth, public events. So I think it's important to characterize these right. What we're really going for there is showings of work. So that could be in conjunction with an artist residency. They made something over the last week. They want to show it to people, get some feedback. Or, you know, it could be something like workshops for locals, or a local person presenting a workshop in the chapel. Also interestingly, I sat in on the Cook County Creative Economies Collaboration meeting this morning. They invited me there just to listen in, introduce myself, and I thought it was interesting that they made it a point to say that there is existing precedent for something like this. You know, there are galleries out in the woods, basically, that have public events from time to time. Last, chickens, we love them. We have an egg-laying flock of hens, and we had our first flock of meat chickens last year, so we're planning to keep doing that. All right, to switch gears just a little bit and talk about cooperatives, because I think they're potentially the most confusing aspect of the proposal. So our group has done a ton of learning about cooperatives over the last few years, and we're going to continue to do so. It's an integral part of the cooperative tradition as we've come to understand it. You know, there are a number of different types of cooperatives. A lot of them you're familiar with. So consumer cooperatives, producer, housing, worker cooperatives, just to name a few. But the most important thing to understand about any type of cooperative is that it's a business that has been organized for the benefit of its members. So that benefit obviously takes different forms depending on the cooperative. A producer co-op would seek to increase market share and profitability for its members, like a dairy cooperative, really old style of cooperative. A consumer cooperative utilizes group buying power to obtain desired goods or services at reduced prices. That one's pretty familiar. Cook County Whole Foods Co-op, Airhead Electric Co-op. Housing cooperative organizes owners and their tenants into a single entity to allow them to afford housing and create structures of governance to address its management. So what we're formulating is actually, it's a hybrid cooperative. We're combining aspects of a housing cooperative, that's the residents, the 3 of us that live there, with a consumer cooperative, the other members, to be able to manage the land and the buildings together. I have filed, as Neva mentioned, with the state of Minnesota under statute 308A. It's a common filing for cooperatives in the state. And that filing is currently under only my name until we have necessary permissions in place to keep moving forward. So I do want to say, just to be clear, I am both the owner of this property and a member of the prospective co-op. And I understand that could look a little dodgy to someone sitting outside of our conversations. But something I want to emphasize is that I have not and really have no intention to inhabit my role as the owner of the property for profit. In fact, I've subsidized the ability for the property to even be livable to this point. And I'm hoping that given this conditional use permit, we're able to fully realize our membership goals and reach a point of sustainability. I could have easily used my resources to forward my individual prosperity, but I'm really not interested in that. I'm interested in creating equitable frameworks that allow other folks to learn from this place, from its peace, its solitude, even its harshness. Those black flies, they're killer right now. I hope that helps give some sense of context to the project. So I decided to take on this tricky project and property because I really see it as something worth doing. When I saw those buildings for the first time and found out they had been vacant for so long, went a long way towards convincing me to take this leap. I think a lot of people would rather start fresh and with a clean slate. I understand, believe me. These buildings present all sorts of fun challenges. But that's not my ethic. I would much rather work with what exists than build new. I hope that also allays some fears of development expressed in the comments. This site is already developed. If some sort of permission isn't given to execute a vision on the land, it seems to me quite a waste of what's already there. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank my neighbors that wrote in or have come here to speak. While I respect the validity of this process, I also want to emphasize my priority and commitment to being a good neighbor. I understand that there are some aspects of this proposal that might make folks anxious, even fearful that this is the beginning of the end for Hovland. So first, I hear you. I love that this place is rugged and sparse, and there's absolutely a part of me that bristles at the term resort. If I got a letter in the mail regarding someone starting a resort in Hovland that I didn't know, I'd probably be firing up my email too. So please know it's not my intent to commercialize the North Road. Ross, Margaret, and I have gotten to have a lot of really meaningful conversations with our nearest neighbors as a result of the process, and I'm very grateful for that. We want to be in conversation with you, so if we haven't met yet, please feel free to stop by, catch us in the yard if you haven't done so. Again, thank you to the Planning Commission for your consideration of this conditional use permit. I know that you all occupy a tricky position as the county continues to grow and change. To quote the author, Octavia Butler, "Change is the only lasting truth." I believe it's better to acknowledge and shape that change with awareness and wisdom rather than to deny its existence. I ask you to please recommend approval for our conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in support of the conditional use permit?
Hi, good evening. My name is Sharon Crossbear. I live at 4763 Chicago Bay Road, Hovland, Minnesota. Been a long-term resident, and I was the one that did not get my letter in on time. So I'm going to read it to you, and then I have a couple of other comments.
Okay.
So as county decision makers, a part of your duty is of land use is to represent the desire of county residents regarding the use of properties to ensure that it is in alignment with the needs, wants, purpose, residents in the community, environmentally and socially sound. Hovland has always been an outlier in the county with its land use conversations and has a history of having a much more conservative stance on development. The Tamarack Cooperative is completely congruent with the values of a Hovland community and sustainable development. The property has had various purposes in the past, and this revitalization of the property to serve the community by providing space for the creation of events and the support of the arts and artisans is in a non-intrusive way is to be commended. The Tamarack Cooperative members, property owners, have been proactive in their outreach to the community connections and are an asset to our unorganized territory. They did this in the middle of a pandemic, and they proved themselves to be good neighbors and citizens serving in a number of capacities within our county, including the post office and now the clinic, and servers and feeding us. They have managed to settle in, gain long-term employment, and create avenues for community-wide consultation by actively engaging with the neighbors. A land use permit award will assist us in being a vibrant haven for creative and community-minded participation, which benefits the whole. There is nothing disruptive or destructive about the plan for the property, nor would it have a negative impact for the neighboring residents. The informed, equitable, and thoughtful way that the Tamarack folks have proceeded to become a vital part of our community is welcomed, and we support the land use permit. And I just want to say, I was thinking about this on the way in, because I was thinking about Hovland, and I've been a resident of the county for a lifetime, Hovland in particular for over 20 years now. And the thing I was thinking about with Hovland was thinking about the things that came out of Hovland, just this kind of a innovative breath of fresh air. So for those of you that don't know the history, on Chicago Bay, the old schoolhouse was the precursor to North House. That's kind of where those discussions began, right? And moved into it. And then there was the Chicago Bay Cafe. And that was the precursor to bringing jazz and music and eventually music festivals into the county. So I think that it is completely appropriate and part of our kind of history to welcome this energy and to see what's happening in Hovland in terms of engaging our local community members in conversations around art, music, support, being good neighbors, and all of that has happened. So I would ask that you consider that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that wishes to offer support? Please take the microphone.
I'm Lawrence Doe. My wife and I live at 4582 North Road in Hovland. We've had the property there for about 30 years. And we've watched that property around the corner from us while people were living in it before and then when it was abandoned. And I'm a retired building contractor. I worked in historic and vintage homes in the metropolitan area, and I've built in 2 different states and about 7 counties. So I am familiar with the different laws and regulations and zoning and land use. And I have to say, as an aside, in the 30 years, many things have changed around land use and enforcement and the things that the county is doing, and I really respect what the county is doing. But there's been a lot of change, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with that, especially for new folks. So I think the mistakes that were made were simply mistakes of not knowing the process. And I think that these folks have shown themselves to have a lot of integrity. When I walked through the property with the new owners, as a builder, I love old buildings, and I was shocked at the project that they'd taken on. It was not for the faint of heart. It was expensive, time-consuming, and a little perplexing because how it was built was not known to the new owners, so there was a lot of exploration that had to happen. They drew on a lot of county experts, made a lot of contacts with folks to really bring the property back and make it of real value to the county. They've done the same thing in stewardship for the land, for the plantings that they've done, in the forestry stewardship of the 40 acres and the stewardship of the water. I've been very impressed with their stewardship on the basis of that. And the things in their proposal are already happening around the county. They're just not happening up in the Hovland area. I think you'll notice that there's a bunch of those same kind of activities going on. We have co-ops in the county. We have lots of art activities. We have all kinds of that kind of things. North House and the Art Colony currently are both expanding because there's such a need for that kind of activity. And again, it's focused in sort of a constricted area in Grand Marais, and not so much, or some of that activity up the trail, but there's nothing like that in Hovland. So I think that the pressure for that kind of activity is I think that this proposal meets some of the needs for that kind of activities. Now, some of the specific stuff, parking, I've been on the property, there's plenty of parking space. They also, in terms of traffic going down, North Road is gravel, we live on the gravel part of it. This property is located very close to the paved part of the arrowhead. So any activity coming and going, in fact, they're commuting as they go into work into Grand Marais here. They take the hard top, they don't go down the graveled. So their activity is not increasing traffic on the North Road. There is some increased activity because there's new owners, new properties being built, so that's increasing traffic somewhat. But this activity they're so close to the hardtop that's how they're going to go out. Noise, in terms of noise, I hear from our 80 acres, we hear chainsaws, we hear logging trucks, we hear sawmill operations, we hear dogs, and we hear airplanes and helicopters flying over. I was a little surprised 2 winters ago that the helicopter kept turning right above our property and heading back east. I called the county sheriff because I thought maybe there was criminals that they were looking for that we needed to be alerted to, and they said, no, that's the moose survey. And it turns out that right in the middle of our property is where they headed back as the band was doing their moose survey. So we were pleased that that's what the activity was. And change is happening in Hovland. With the electrical and broadband going up the Arrowhead Trail, there's going to be a lot more activity up in the Hovland area. And all of us that live in Hovland want it to stay the same. It's quiet. It has a certain edgy aspect to it, and we all enjoy that. But it's going to change. The pressure on private land for development, for housing is clear. All of you folks know that. And with them running power up the McFarland and the broadband, that property, there's going to be a lot more activity in Hovland. The real estate companies have all said Hovland is hot. If you see their ads in the monthly rag, they're talking about how much activity is in the Hovland area in terms of change. All of us would like it to stay the same, but it's not going to do that.
Okay.
So I think your activity as to what kind of change you think is acceptable within the county. And I certainly think that this proposal is acceptable with what's already happening in the county and would really be a great addition to the Hovland area. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to support the project? Okay, I'm going to ask about 3 minutes of comment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Nielsen. My property is kitty corner to the property that's being discussed today. And I can do it in less than 3 minutes. I'm also here to speak on behalf of another property owner, Denny Pikacek, my friend and neighbor, who is not quite directly opposite across on North Road, but one property over and opposite. And he's authorized me to also speak on his behalf. We just would both like to say that we are 100% in support of this project. We think that the people involved are doing an excellent job with that property. We think that it's going to be of great benefit to the Hovland community and area, and that they are being excellent neighbors.
Thank you.
That's all I really want to say for both me and Denny Pikacek.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in support?
Hi, my name is Howard Reeves, 10700 38th Avenue North in Plymouth, Minnesota. I own the property, my wife and I, directly next to the west side of these folks. It's been in my wife's family since 1899, her grandfather's homestead from Norway. And it has deep, deep, deep emotional ties, as you can well imagine, for us. I just want to assure you the quality of the people who are our neighbors and have been for the last couple of years, and just the concern for the land and the way they care about people and have reached out to make sure that any questions, any concerns we have would be answered. So I think this would be in very, very good hands with these folks and to look into it. So I support the project.
Thank you. Anyone else in support? Okay, I'll ask anyone who wishes to oppose the permit. And for the record, we do have comments and letters that have been submitted, and those will be considered as well. Anyone else in the audience wish to oppose the project? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and the Planning Commission will discuss.
I got a couple of startup questions. First of all, is this parcel located within the incorporated part of Hovland? Or is this county land?
There is no
Unorganized.
incorporated Hovland. I mean, it's.
Okay.
It's
And
not a township,
and that is why it perhaps then was R1?
That is-
I mean, 40 acre R1 sounds a little on the oversized to me. And I suspect that it probably would stay on the market forever if they were looking for an individual to build that as a single R1 property. So I think that there seem to be two choices here. One is to take the direction of somebody who has looked at this property and found value in it, including resurrecting artifacts that are on the site, utilizing what's there as a basis, and complementing that as it grows. Or the alternative is to say, all right, scrap that, bulldoze it down, and let's create 22-acre lots or 41-acre lots. I'm from really the Colville area, very close to Hovland, but Hovland is very important to me as a part of my neighborhood. I have watched Hovland for the years. I moved out there because of the peace and quiet of that section of the county. The east side is pretty well known as laid back, and part of it is also just ignored. Personally, I'm seeing this as a potential opportunity. I came to this with no decision in mind about the direction on it. I wanted to hear what people had to say about it. All the folks so far have spoken positively. Nobody who has opposed it has been willing to stand forth and say that this is big enough that they should fight this down. So I'm going to take that and say, I think, to me, this is a hopeful project. My position right now is that I'm definitely in support of where it's going, and I look forward to the development of the site.
Does anyone else from the planning commission wish to
I
comment?
was wondering about water. Do you have a well on that property?
Yes, we do. And I have had it tested, so it is safe to drink. So it's potable in that sense. It is Hovland water in that it's safe. It's not particularly pleasant to drink. But we do have an under sink reverse osmosis. So that's what we do. That's what we use primarily for our drinking water. And then we also use our neighbor, Bob and Kathy Travis's artesian well, because they allow folks to fill up. So when we are going to have a big soup or something like that, and I use it in different buildings because not all the buildings are plumbed. So we'll put out a 7-gallon jug to supplement that.
And these events you're having, how many people do you plan to draw in?
I think, so with the Fox and Beggar event in particular, I think, that sort of represents the high end of events, and what we had said in that ARAC grant was 75 people was our goal. That I think looks like a very large event, so when I talk about, like a workshop that a local would offer, you're probably gonna, have 10 people in that workshop. If you're gonna do a small showing, someone, put together some work and they just want to get some public feedback on it, not expecting 75 people to show up for that. And that's where I think, it's been a good realization, like, we'll put the 75 people event at the town hall and wake that up, because I think that's a great opportunity to utilize that space, and it has the facilities and parking to deal with
You
that.
are
already,
thinking it's
so.
a possibility to have 30, 40 cars in there at once.
Potentially, yeah, and we do have, the front portion of the property is where the old farmhouse was, which no longer exists, so there's, I don't know the exact size off the top of my head, but you could easily put 30 to 40 cars in there.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, my biggest concern is under the recommended conditions number 3, that it needs to be more specific too. Like this, I agree with the 6 people thing until septic system can be expanded. And we also then, if it is expanded, I think we need to have a cap in there too, as how many people can be on the property overnight. And if there's a vent thing too, I think we need to include sanitation stuff on that too, such as
Okay,
porta potties or whatnot.
okay. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman, Commissioner. In that number 3, it does say to 6 people until the septic system can be expanded to adequately accommodate the 20 people, and that would be the upper ended cap, I think that you would be referencing, would be the 20.
It would be set at 20 people
Yes.
once it was up to, okay.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in here about waste for events or caps on capacity of events. So I think.
We can add that.
Yeah, I think we will need to add that in there.
Does this require state help in determinations?
You spoke.
Yeah, so my understanding is the Minnesota Department of Health would do the lodging license. Yep.
Okay.
It said because it's not considered a resort, that the resort criteria does not apply?
Right, so the resort criteria are outlined for 2 specific zone districts. So because this isn't in those zone districts, those criteria don't necessarily are required for this. So you guys have a lot of flexibility with how you want to capture the conditions on this.
And that's the county level resort standards in the county ordinance and not the state. The state standards would apply with the state license.
Okay.
I support the idea. I think a lot of the support for it, though, is based on the current ownership, that they have been respectful in the community. I have a concern about moving this forward as a conditional use versus an interim. And I'm not sure about needing to look at a time frame, but having an interim as it wouldn't be a transferable. I could see a future owner potentially abusing these conditions. And so that I think,
Okay,
if the applicant would be amenable to that, that would make me a lot more comfortable with it. I think it's a really great idea. I think we've seen a lot of community engagement, and I'd like it to be an interim if the applicant's agreeable.
one thing I'd like to consider, we have received numerous comments in writing from people who are opposed, and I think we should look at their questioning and what they're opposed to. Just because they're not here doesn't mean they aren't heard. And, I think we should consider what we've been told from people who are not in favor of this.
I mean, as a member of the community, I know most of the people in the room here, and a lot of the authors of those letters are here, and they've just chosen that their letter represented their feelings. I do think that we could craft conditions to address their concerns and allow
Okay.
this to move forward.
One of my concerns is the fact that we're basically spot zoning. We're changing, people when they buy property know what they're getting as far as zoning is concerned. And just because they get an idea doesn't mean that we have to change the zoning to accommodate their idea. And that's how I feel about several of these requests we've had. Tim?
Just to kind of be clear about that, with the distinction between a spot zoning and if the planning commission would modify a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to alter it to an interim use type permit. Zoning is something that stays with the property forever, as does conditional uses. If it is an interim use, and that interim use then was designated to stay with, only under the current ownership, then once that ownership is changed, it goes away. The whole permit and that goes away. So it is not, in actuality, spot zoning. It would just be, this is a different kind of tool in the ordinance that allows for a kind of change in that use for a specified period of time.
Okay. Can I ask who owns the property? You as a sole owner?
Yeah, I own it privately, and so I guess just to briefly respond to Charlie, that I would be amenable to that, and I absolutely understand where that's coming from. I think we're also in a conversation about the cooperative itself assuming ownership, and so I would want to acknowledge that if we're going to make that provision, that the distinction between the two, I feel like we're still in the spirit of it, right? If Tamarack
I think so.
Land Cooperative owns it rather than me privately, that's sort of where I want to take it to, and so I'd like to have that be recognized in that condition.
Okay. And can I ask how this is, you said you've applied for the proper paperwork to form a cooperative?
Correct, yeah, we're filed with
And you will
the
deed
state, yes.
your interest into the property over to the cooperative?
That is something that we're in discussion with internally, but right now I own it. And sort of if and when the cooperative is able to make, assume the sort of financial burden of it, that's where I would like to take it, yes.
Because I really would like to know who's owning this and how that's going to work.
Mhm.
Is it religion-based, or, the cooperative members, where are you finding them?
So there's, 3 of us that are full-time Cook County residents right now. And then a lot of the folks that have been involved in the process so far are people that are, in our personal networks, largely from the Twin Cities is where we lived before.
Okay. Tim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the thoughts that the Planning Commission could explore in this sense, if the ownership structure is one of those issues that is a bit confusing, and you might not want to necessarily tie an interim use to a change in ownership, since it could be a little convoluted with regards to a cooperative. You could do it with regards to a period of time, say 5 years or something, to give it that time in which then the permit would expire and they would have to come in and go through the entire process once again.
So we would be granting Mr. Stucker the conditional use permit, interim or not, and then is it transferred, if they form this cooperative, is it directly transferred to the cooperative? Or does he retain the conditional use? Because that's a transfer of property and the conditional use permit would end.
And Madam Chair, the decision or the recommendation would be yours. You can set the interim use permit for a period of 5 years or 10 years or whatever, and that would be for the property. And whatever the ownership changed at that time, you could have it so that it is set just strictly as a period of time, so that it could be a cooperative or individually owned or whatever. You could also set it as a change in the ownership as well. So if you could be pretty complex about it because it is an interim use permit and it is a very flexible tool. You could say 5 years or a change in the ownership to that respect, as just kind of that safeguard as to what you guys would be comfortable with.
Okay.
And at which time that transfer and that reapplication, if everything's been going smoothly, I guess that would likely give the community more comfort with it moving forward then. So, I mean, either way, it's a check on the operation and the.
When the ownership changes, the interim permit has to be renewed, would be my recommendation. And that means when the cooperative is formed, at this point, we're giving this conditional use permit to Mr. Stucker.
And just one further clarification. Basically, how it works right now is the cooperative leases from me as the owner, right? So that's the current structure.
Say that again, please.
Basically, the Tamarack Land Cooperative leases the property from me effectively. So that's how I am both the sole owner, and there is already a Tamarack Land Cooperative filed that occupies the space and leases from me, basically,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
all right. I have a little concern about the number of people using the property. I realize that 40 acres of R1 allows 20 home sites. That's what the zoning allows. And, there's a planned or a open space subdivision that could be applied where you commit, you build out what you're going to build out and the rest is dedicated to open space. I'm not comfortable creating a resort, which is what this is, whatever you want to call it. It's a resort that's not zoned properly, and that's kind of where I land.
I agree that it's a resort, and that's why I raised the question about Department of Health, because they have regulations on that. At the same time, I don't know how familiar you are with the property, but I've gone by this for 20, 25 years and been curious about it a number of times over the years, learned some of its history and stuff like that, and always wondered what was going to happen. Was it going to be revived or whatever? This has been languishing there for a long enough period of time that I think that it's begging for use. I think the people in my area from Colville to Hovland to Grand Portage are interested in some kind of investment and development. And when I look at it from that perspective, I'm seeing a very benign type of application. Call it a resort. It's not Caesars or anything like that. This is a limited organization, limiting itself on the face to 20 people in a 40-acre area that is otherwise underserved and not noted. You don't get 10 cars a day by that place. I don't think that the traffic or the growth or the number of people that are involved in this are a problem. I think that what we've got is we have an organization and a project that has value. I didn't hear any criticism of what his effort is. So then if we look at the other side of it, is we've got a piece of land that's sitting there begging for something to be done with it. Now, what we're trying to do is put the two together and say, does this fit? Is it going to work?
Right, and what I would have liked to have seen is before he actually paid the money for it, to come to zoning, figure out what the zoning was, and describe what he's doing and see if it fits there. That would be the proper way to do things.
I don't disagree with that, but I'm saying that he came across the property opportunistically and it's zoned R1. Now, anybody who lives in there and looks at that and says, what are you thinking when you say R1? Now, if it's within the boundaries of Hovland, I can understand that, but when I look at it on the maps, on the edge, isolated there with a bunch of FAR 2s around it, I wonder whether that should not be just chopped off of Hovland and put into a FAR 2, FAR 3, whatever level it is. I would agree with that. But in the meantime, we do have the right, according to the kind of rules, to assign that to it even as an R1. I mean, that's within our authority to do that. And so that's why I'm not concerned, but, if...
Some of the words used, donation, that speaks of a nonprofit. TLC looks like an LLC. I grow a little concerned about what really is it may be all just fine and above board, but we have been, we had a church group who came that pretty much didn't do what they were going to do and created a lot of havoc, and that's my concern. And it all may be well and good, and if you're doing what you say and your neighbors are happy, it makes me feel better, but the cooperative business and by donation, that feels like a way to get around government taxes, If it's a resort, call it a resort. That would be my inclination, so. Any other comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to speak really quickly because we're having a lot of conversation about resort here. I wanted to clarify for the record that I'm the one who worked with the applicants to pull the word resort into this. So the applicant never came to the county and said, I want to start a resort. Okay, that was never the way the conversation started. It started with them explaining the different uses that we outlined, these 5 different uses. And I looked at those and said, what would we define this as the county? So sort of trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. So I looked at the different uses and we said, look, you're having different groups come on the property and stay for a period of time and then they're leaving. The closest you get to is a resort. But the more that I hear the conversation coming out and the more I think they're cooperative members, it's only 16 people besides the 3 people that are living there full time. So 16 people are coming there throughout the year. The whole number of nights, when you look at those 16 people, is either 1.2 or 1.4 full-time equivalents. So not even adding 2 more full-time people living there the whole time. So that's just, I wanted to put the scope of that use into perspective here. That when we say resort, we're not talking about groups of 5 people of multiple groups coming in at the same time. The cooperative is 16 people coming throughout the year, staying for periods of time. And then the artist residency, which also was capped at a certain number. So I did want to just put a friendly reminder out there to say, I'm the one responsible for using the word resort and kind of explain why that word came up. We could have just as easily potentially called this instead members cooperative and artist residency.
Let's not forget the campground.
So with that, there are 4 tent sites, and I think that's perhaps what that comment was referring to, and that's a part of this. But I just wanted to clarify that, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments from the Planning Commission?
I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was Tamarack Land Cooperative instead of Mr. Stucker. That's all.
I know cooperatives are regulated in a whole different way to protect people from being scammed and money taken, and you can say you're a member, but the reality is if you don't have a share in the legitimate cooperative, you have no legal standing. And until that happens, to call it a cooperative without it being a cooperative, to call it collect money by donation without being a nonprofit, those are red flags for me. And, maybe it's just terminology, but I've been around the block a couple times and it makes me nervous. So it may be all well and good.
May I respond
Sure.
to the idea of membership and also donations? So, like I said, there's sort of this horse and cart in terms of there is a filed organization that is Tamarack Land Cooperative, and it currently only has my name on it because I'm not comfortable asking people for a buy-in on that until I know that we can do this project on the land. So once you buy in as a member of the cooperative, you do have an ownership stake in it. So we have already crafted bylaws for that organization that govern all these rules basically about membership and dissolution. Should the cooperative own the property, there's a whole set of items about dissolution and handling that. So just to assuage fears of it being a scam, I guess. And in terms of donations and nonprofits, I think there is absolutely a component of what we want to do that could be represented by a nonprofit. Now, vacation rentals and member stays is not one of those. So, and when we present arts programming, for instance, we got this grant through the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council. We're not a nonprofit, so we can't take that grant. So we used a fiscal sponsor to take that grant, and that's a pretty common.
Who's the fiscal sponsor?
The fiscal sponsor is Red Eye Theater Collaborative in Minneapolis.
Okay.
So they, and that's a pretty common way that grants are awarded to folks that are still forming what they're working on before they go through the full 501c3 process with the IRS, because that's a pretty extensive process. And I've worked in nonprofits, and a lot of the people involved have worked pretty extensively in nonprofits. So there's absolutely a programmatic aspect of what we want to do, especially around the arts programming, and potentially events in conjunction with that, that I think totally commend themselves to getting grants and taking donations to support that work. And so there very well might be a wing or a component of our sort of larger project that utilizes a 501c3 or a tax exempt status in order to take grants like that in the future. But we're still, it's kind of a toddler, and we're still holding its hand through this process of establishing itself and figuring out all these rules, because they're pretty complex.
Yep. When we're talking numbers, I mean, we're probably going to cap this as to how many people can be on the property at any given time. What numbers are you envisioning?
I think where we stand, per the recommendation, is pretty spot on. So we're looking at 20 or less members. And I responded about events. Those might very occasionally balloon the number of people on the property, and I think it absolutely makes sense to have a porta potty or some sort of, temporary solution for the septic on that. So we'd be looking at 20 members, and all these sort of numbers are spelled out in the staff recommendation as well. So artist residency we're looking at 10 max, and like I said, that typically would
10
be
more?
10 artist
Additional?
residencies for the year.
Oh, but is that included in the 20, or is that in addition to the 20?
That would be separate. So someone coming up and doing an artist residency would not necessarily be a member of the cooperative.
Okay.
Just like someone booking a vacation rental would not necessarily be a member of the cooperative.
Okay.
So there's a group of people that have bought in and govern this place. There are also other revenue streams
And
that we
when a
have.
person is a member of the cooperative, say I'm a member, can my family come?
That's a great question. I think we're still sort of finding those things out. I think basically our limiting factor is how many places we have to sleep. And that's been pretty well spelled out. So we're looking at 20 people max. So if you want to bring a guest or your family with you, then you'd have to look at the capacity of the site at that point. And so if there aren't accommodations for them, then the answer would be no.
And the vacation rentals, how many do they accommodate?
Those would be included in that max 20 occupancy.
So a family of 4 would count as 4,
Correct.
okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we're really looking at basically beds in the house, and Neva and I work together to break out what we currently have and how many people
And
that
the tent
would support.
sites?
The tent sites are pretty informal, but they're in the tree line of the clearing. So if you're familiar with the property, there's about 5 acres of a clearing there.
My concern is, if you got a tent for 4 and 4 sites, that's 16. And then you've got the housing, and then you've got residencies, and you have a septic that accommodates 6 people.
The 10 sites were included in the 20 maximum.
Okay? Hey, you heard it here. Gotta count heads.
I got a question for Tim or Neva. Can we, where is it? What is the Tamarack Land Cooperative? Can Tamarack Land Cooperative be, since this was already applied for as Paul Stucker, can that be change to a joint application, or do we need to stick with just Paul? What I'm getting at is like in some of my applications, we had a previous landowner jointly applying with us to do an operation on a property. Can we, are you following me there, Tim?
Yeah, Madam Chair and Commissioner Laboda, that if there is a legal entity and a legal interest in that property as an ownership entity in that property, then yes.
In this case, though, Tamarack Land Corp has no legal interest, so we couldn't go that route.
And how many shares will be in the cooperative?
So that would be that 20 number as well. So that's the 3 residents and the additional members, the non-resident members.
But what's the total shares being offered to be in the cooperative?
What we projected is 20.
20 bodies, 20?
Correct, yes. Yep, 20 shares. So that's the 3 residents, 6 people staying 50 nights, and 10 people staying 14 nights.
Is there a reason why you're holding off on the septic other than this? Is this it why? Could you get the septic upgraded right away, or?
Yeah, and I've been talking to Mitch Everson about the septic ordinance. We had a phone call the other day. Really, that's just me coming to understand this process and how septics work. And I think there's absolutely an interest in creating something that would be out by the chapel, because that would just serve, that's just a flow of the clearing, basically, and how the buildings work. It makes more sense to have a vault privy or something that would help expand the septic capacity of the property and would also serve the different buildings more directly.
Well, and 20 people with 20 showers and 20, the number of flushes and the cooking. Is there a licensed commercial kitchen involved?
There's not, no.
No? It's like a vacation rental? Do you cook on their own, group cooking?
That's a great question that I would love to continue working with Land Services on. I'm really not sure the answer on that. There is a kitchen in the barn house. It's a residential structure. So there are residents that live in the barn house right now. There are also bedrooms that non-resident members and visitors would use. And so as a condition of the permit, we would meet any and all requirements by the Department of Health.
I think it depends on whether you're selling food. And if you're doing it by donation, that's another way
Right.
around things. So,
Madam Chair, I'd like to take a stab at a
Okay.
motion. and
I
see
welcome
if it
one.
works. I would like to motion to approve and as recommended as an interim use permit with conditions, and I'm going to try to go through these here. Condition 1, property must comply with all state, local, federal rules and secure necessary permits. Outdoor quiet hours, condition 2, outdoor quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. Property, condition 3, maximum occupancy of 6 people until appropriate SSTS site, a plan for an appropriate sewage plan for the property to address the actual infrastructure and events. And I kind of got a little lost on my verbiage there, but I think that got it.
I think you did a good job.
A parking plan should be submitted and approved by Land Services that does address emergency access and where the parking's going to be. Lighting should comply with international, so I'm on condition 5 now, I just did 4. 5 is lighting should be don't know if in compliance, but dark sky compliant, if that's, outdoor, no. Condition 6, all music shall be indoors and cease at 10 o'clock. Noise on the site shall comply with Minnesota Statute 7030 for noise pollution standards. Condition 7, all signage shall comply with the Cook County sign ordinance. Condition 8, this interim use permit shall terminate upon transfer of ownership of the property.
Is there a term for the interim use permit? 3 years?
Upon transfer of ownership. So if
Well,
Mr.
if he-
Stucker transfers to, is it Tamarack Land Cooperative, that would be a transfer of
Right,
ownership. So
but
I
how long
wasn't-
are we making the interim use permit?
Can I
3,
ask the
2,
applicant?
1?
Are you planning on transferring in the near future, or is that a?
It's an active conversation, and I'm not really sure how it's going to come out. So I think if you wanted to put a time limit on it, I feel like 5 years would be appropriate. We're still sort of putting the road down in front of us as we go, so.
I would go with 5.
With a 5-year
5 years
interim
or transfer of ownership,
5 or transfer,
whichever
okay.
is,
All right,
happens first.
all right. And with the understanding that if the conditions are violated, the permit ends?
Yeah.
Okay. And Neva?
May I clarify a couple of the conditions?
Yes, I know I got a little.
Yeah, so first, condition 3 for the septic. The language I have in here, I worked with Mitch Everson, because I think that you guys can defer to our Cook County septic ordinance and our environmental health specialist to work with Paul. Mitch was very specific that the 6-person occupancy is limited to the barn house until additional septic capacity is increased on the property to be closer to those other living spaces.
Yep.
So I would recommend, if possible, that phrase that condition be phrased similar to what's in here, just to add only in the barn house, and use that terminology about the capacity and the occupancy of 20 people until that expansion can occur. It's up to you.
Okay.
That's just.
Oh, I agree with you completely, and really what I was trying to get at was by stating a SSTS plan was to address events, any.
Oh, okay.
Something like that, where there should be a plan
Sure.
for when additional capacity, porta potties
Yeah.
or whatever, or some other
Right,
higher need. It needs to be addressed in a plan, I would think, up front.
right.
I want to, I would like to add on that too, Madam Chair, is with number 3, if at the end of that, we said, and the system shall be, or the property shall be in compliance with Minnesota Rule 7080, then it's inherent that all the septic, whether it's for events or anything, has to adhere to all the appropriate septic rules. So if we do end that provision or that condition with must be in adherence with Minnesota Rule 7080, that kind of covers all of it.
Okay.
As
That
well.
was-
So it inherently has to adhere to
That was
that.
my intent in
Yeah.
whatever got written this.
One other condition on these events, how many are we talking? 1 a week?
I
3,
would think,
5? Number of capacity, 200-300 Woodstock?
okay.
He said 70 to 80 is the max on a
let's-
big event.
Let's add a condition 9 to address
Okay.
events. Can I address the applicant at this?
Sure.
Can you, what is a realistic, I mean, if we did 1 event a month, or, what's realistic and capped it at 80 people? Is that?
That does sound,
with
yeah, I would be
your-
amenable to that, yes, thank you.
Does that work for you?
That's a lot of events.
1 a month?
Yeah, that's another end of, or another spectrum of the commercial operation.
What about, okay, I got another,
I'd welcome a little more activity in our end of the county.
You live in
I'm trying to
Coolville.
get the intent of what I was getting.
Close enough.
What would be the duration of an event, of a typical event? Let's ask that first.
Sure, yeah, I think, we'd be looking at a few hours for an event. If, for instance, the Fox and Beggar Show would have been, sort of people would have gathered for maybe 30, 45 minutes beforehand, hour-long show. And I believe they proposed to have a Q&A afterwards where people could, sort of meet the cast. That maybe be another 45 minutes, so that maybe be a 3-hour event.
Okay.
That feels like, yeah.
I mean, so if we said one event a month, we're really talking like one day a month to allow that.
Correct,
type,
yes, not a multi-day event.
Not an extended festival type thing.
Correct,
And we're talking about 20 people actually staying overnight,
correct,
not the guests at the event.
correct.
Okay,
So I would go with condition 9 as one event per month capped at 80 people.
okay,
I think I'm comfortable with that.
okay. And that's your motion?
That's my motion.
Neva?
May I just really quickly, the lighting condition? I didn't quite capture what you said, Charlie, but I had in item A here, potential language for that, just about exterior lighting being downcast.
Yep.
And fully shielded light fixtures. Is that what you wanted to propose or something different?
I guess is there actual dark sky standards?
They have a
Or-
lot of recommendations on their website.
but it's more
So it's kind of best
recommendation?
practices.
Okay. Then we should put specifics in, so, so yes, your verbiage, to require exterior lighting to be downcast, fully shielded light fixtures, and lighting colors to minimize blue light colors.
Right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Everyone understand the 9 conditions that we've talked about that are included in the motion? Everyone agree? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay. Judy? Motion carries. And now it will go to the county board, and they will, this is a recommendation to the county board, and then they will take it from there. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? We're done. Thank you.
Aye, aye, aye.
Something after that.
The one that got up. I keep trying to, every time I remember this story.
Can we take a little break?
Come on back.
I need one. I've got
All
a,
right, so our first applicant
stay
in the
now.
phone line.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to
You gotta be like
get
me.
my work cell.
Hang
I
out.
don't know how loud it's gonna be.
And this is the first time I've seen somebody that actually had a business plan, well-developed and pretty well backgrounded. Not perfect, but very good, and it kind of excites me.
what he's saying is, I could be for it. I don't trust him. You know, that's my issue.
Okay, no, I'm just saying why I like it. And that doesn't mean anybody else has to like it for the same reasons. Fun stuff.
Now for the.
We can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I think that building's really cool. It could be really neat inside.
Yeah, I haven't gone inside any of
I
them.
haven't either.
I hope this isn't the case.
Too much sitting today,
I thought we bought a fire suppression pump.
And they said, he said, what kind of truck? They said, any truck. Get some extra. Maybe it's not a truck. So this.
I don't believe it is, but oh my God.
Tractor trailer.
You got in and out, I guess. Is the same guy?
I don't know. If it is, we just had.
That doesn't go.
Knows if it was broken.
That guy looks about 15 years older than him.
He shouldn't be out. Just like, oh my God. I'm just kidding. I hope. But
Judy grew up in Chicago Way. She's still alive.
it wasn't a good question to ask.
Built a Hovland store and all that. That's what she grew up. We've had this property for 50 years. Yeah, we have, yeah.
Get out into the county.
And the generation like my age, mid-40s to mid-30s, they're all into this cooperative stuff now.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys.
I don't have any problem with that.
Just wanted to say thank you for your support, understanding this sort of wacky place that we have.
Well, yeah, like I say, I had, before any of it started, I actually had a person call me up and speak negatively about it, and I took it down. I don't make decisions on the phone like that. But I knew that there was that component there, and then I knew also, when I got the letters and stuff, I saw this is kind of a mixed field. We had a controversial one in a previous meeting out in that neighborhood. Yeah, okay. And this is not the same thing. And I don't think if we come here off of that thinking somehow this is another level of it, then we're prejudicing ourselves against that. So when I started hearing the comments and I compared them to what I read in the negatives is more words from a movement that seems to be growing to a certain degree here against over-tourism, which is a coined word and I'm not of the belief of that. I've been involved in the tourist industry, I've been involved in retail, I've been in all these different areas, and I would absolutely resist that term for this area. The numbers are not there. We need more numbers on the east end. And, I go out there, my daughter lives even further out, and she would like the kinds of things that you've got there. She's of that kind of thinking. So, when I thought about all that, I looked at what you were doing. The only thing that jumped out at me, though, and said,
Okay,
huh?
all right, sounds good.
50 chickens?
Well, it's usually 16 girls. So we bump it up.
You're going to have the eggs available so I can drive down and pick them up?
Yeah. You got backlog this winter, but now it's on.
Yeah. No, and my daughter, who owns property out that way, raised chickens down in Burnsville for a long time, in town, with a permit and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, that site has been begging for something for a long time. I worked on I was on the Soil and Water, and when we did the flute reed project through there, the banking and the earth berming and stuff like that, and then, so I got a good look at it a lot of times over that, and I said, this has to be something. I didn't realize that it was hooked on to Hovland like it is. I think that's probably created the biggest problem to it, because our 40 acres, like I say.
Yeah. But I mean, all those parcels are like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the way that area is, But no, I offer you good luck for your prospect. I'll keep an eye on it because, like I say, it's my neighborhood. I'll just keep well aware of what's going on. Thank you.
That has less than 50 miles
So,
on it. It's impossible. This guy, so these people I used to guide and give dog rides to.
I'll be calling you.
Actually,
Do you got a mailing address?
Yeah.
I sent the invoice for that gravel, but I did a general delivery, and I don't think you probably ever got it.
Oh, no, last year?
Yeah,
I think I paid that one last year.
well, I'll double check my records.
I think I cut a check at least, but 129, PO 129.
PO 129,
Yeah.
that's easy enough then.
Yeah,
I'll just double check. If I'm wrong, I'll, Samantha will know if I'm wrong.
yeah.
Awesome.
Heath were
Well, yeah.
there.
I'll be calling you. Sounds like we'll have to dig out.
Obviously, if I was more worried about
How much he was contractor.
Right, I figured I got in here somewhere.
Cool.
So, anyway.
Right on, well, appreciate your time.
Okay.
I hope that all,
And I really want to wish you well.
Thank you.
I hope you make it. Everybody loves it. So that would be the
That's the hope.
upside.
Yes, thank you.
129 is.
129.
Oh, let's see, we've got,
Here we go.
as soon as clear here.
He's on 5. He's got 5. That's the,
Okay,
Full board.
we're all Board of Adjustment here, aren't we?
Yeah, we're all Board of
All
Adjustment.
right, dude. I would call to order the meeting of the Board of Adjustment for Cook County on June 9th, 8th, or whatever day it's this.
It's the,
And would look for a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes.
also move.
It's been moved to approve the agenda and minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none?
I have a correction.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was present at the Board of Adjustment meeting.
What's that?
I was present at the meeting and I wasn't listed there.
Okay.
It's okay.
So noted. So noted. Are there any other adjustments, corrections? Hearing none, I'll assume we're ready to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Approved. New business. First one, A, has been postponed to July 13th. Business item number B, Blueberry Hill Ventures LLC. Variance request to add a 16 by 16 addition to the existing grandfathered non-conforming cabin to no closer than 70 feet from the ordinary high water level of Tom Lake. Property identification 55-321-3210. Neva.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to inform you that we had an issue with our telephone system here. So I do have the applicant on my work cell, and it's going to be on speaker. So right now he's muted. But after I talk, he's present. I'm hoping we'll be able to have him able to answer your questions.
Okay.
So just to start off with that. All right, the background. The existing cabin is 20 by 24 with a loft and a 234 square foot lakeside deck. The cabin was built in 1973 according to Cook County Assessor's records. The applicant is proposing a 16 by 16 addition to the north side of the existing cabin to increase living space. The applicant also plans to remove the 234 square foot deck. The addition is proposed to be placed no closer than 70 feet from the vegetation line of Tom Lake. The application cites the primary benefits of granting the variance are to add inside living space and to add disability accessibility. The applicant has also stated the following are existing features creating the practical difficulties on the property. Unknown rock formation or ability to excavate the property. The cabin was built prior to zoning regulations. The expense to move the cabin to the minimum setback and disturbance to existing trees and vegetation. And existing well and septic mechanicals are in place. Considerations. The property is well vegetated with an established vegetative buffer between the cabin and Tom Lake. Refer to the aerial photo on page 4 of this staff narrative. This buffer serves to filter stormwater generated from the impervious surfaces as well as provide visual screening of the development from Tom Lake. If approved, this vegetative buffer, the trees in particular, should remain to provide visual screening of the development. Some balsam removal has occurred, and the applicant has explained he will need to remove some trees immediately north of the proposed addition and immediately east of the existing cabin. The cabin has been in a state of disrepair for some time. The applicants propose to improve the existing cabin by improving the foundation and utilities, which may have an incidental adjustment in height with changes to the proposed addition and for additional living space. the proposed deck, and modified grading for a zero clearance entry for handicap access. Utilities are already established. The removal of the lakeside deck will result in an increased distance between the development of the lake. It is feasible a deck be added in the future in accordance with the zoning ordinance by just staff being able to permit that. The increased living space in the cabin will not result in an increase in occupancy. Therefore, this expansion should have no impact on the septic capacity. However, an existing septic compliance will be required in conjunction with the issuance of any land use permit. See the enclosed memo from Mitch Everson. Criteria for evaluating variance requests is outlined in section 14.02D of the zoning ordinance. Please refer to the next page and the test questions on pages 6 and 7. If approved, the following conditions may be applied to this variance. 1, a septic inspection request form shall be submitted before the issuance of any land use permit. 2, no vegetation shall be removed within the shore impact zone unless as part of a fire-wise vegetation plan. And 3, gutters shall be installed on the cabin and direct stormwater runoff away from the lake. Our office sent out 15 letters of notification to adjacent property owners. At the time of this narrative, 1 comment was received opposed to the request from Jennifer Helmick at 228 Brumball Road. It's primarily due to concerns with the potential use as a vacation rental. A memo regarding the septic system compliance from the environmental health officer is enclosed. I will make it so that the applicant is able to be heard here. All right, Chris, are you on?
I am, yep. And is there any questions for me?
We'll turn it over to the chair now and he'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay, then start out with, do you have anything further to add that's been proposed so far?
No, the only thing I would say is in regards to Jennifer's letter, one of the options is to, for us to finance it, would be to use it as an Airbnb, but we're not a long ways from ever finalizing anything like that. First, we got to get it remodeled and that kind of thing. And we own the property to the north of this property, so I mean it's for our advantage to keep it quiet like they want it, and keep it respectable and obviously maintain the property. So that's the only thing I would add. Otherwise, everything's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would wish to speak to this issue? Anybody in the room? Seeing and hearing none, I will withdraw the public comment section and turn it to the board itself. Board, comments?
How does he plan to get there? There's no, he doesn't have access to the property.
Are you
Doesn't he have to cross somebody else's property to get to it?
Looks like a road on there to me.
Yeah,
There's a road to it.
I mean, he's got structures there, somehow they must be able to get in. This is a road, looking at this particular picture of this, the back side of the property is essentially defined by a road that curves.
I'm quite familiar with the area, and I don't really see
that he didn't have access.
a problem with this.
Well, it seems like a reasonable
That's
request
Yeah.
to accommodate an old structure and.
That's okay.
I think it's reasonable.
Okay.
Nothing's out of place or sticks out to me.
And I don't think the vacation rental really is a part of the consideration. It's a permitted use.
Okay.
So, I make a motion to approve the variance as requested and with the conditions.
Okay, a motion has been made to approve the request, including the conditions that have been stated. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on the issue?
Trying to see if there were conditions.
There's three conditions, or three potential conditions.
Okay,
written here.
good. Well, we're ready to vote.
Okay, pretty straightforward. All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the project, vote by signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sound. Carried. You're ready to go.
All All right, Chris, did you hear that?
I did. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're
I
welcome.
will, I'll end the call then unless there's anything else you need from me.
Nope, you're good. We'll talk later.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Now, pages stick together here sometime. The right page. And this is the Hanson proposal. And application, parcel ID 51-115-1115, 159 North Pike Lake Road. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This variance request is to place a 17 by 20 foot cabin with 160 square foot deck, 25 feet from the ordinary high water level of Pike Lake at 159 Pike Lake Road. The applicants, Davina and John Hanson, are requesting relief from the Pike Lake setback to build a second cabin on the property. The proposed cabin would be a single level 17 by 20 dwelling with 160 square foot deck. The cabin would meet the setbacks from the property line and road. Historically, there were 2 dwellings on this Pike Lake property. One cabin was not maintained over time and was eventually removed by the previous owners in about 2019 or 2020. According to a 2012 survey, the removed cabin was approximately 10 feet from Pike Lake. The applicants wish to build a new cabin with less square footage set further back from the shoreline in the same general area as the original cabin. The applicants explain in their application that the unique shape of the lot is a circumstance that has created their practical difficulty. The lot is crescent-shaped, situated between the shoreline and North Pike Lake Road. The setback from the road is 50 feet, and the setback from the lake is 100 feet. Considerations. The Cook County zoning ordinance allows for 1 principal dwelling and 1 guest cabin allowed in a residential zoning district. Allowing the second dwelling would be in harmony with the density standards. There is no location on this lot that meets the road and lake setback. Therefore, a variance will be required for any structure placement on this property. A septic permit will be required in conjunction with the issuance of a land use permit. See Mitch Everson's memo enclosed with this packet. If the original cabin was still in place, the applicants could have replaced the structure with the exact original dimensions. In comparison with the original cabin, it is favorable that this proposed cabin is set further back from the shoreline and has a smaller footprint. Additionally, the proposed cabin is pre-built, therefore there will be less disturbance than if it were to be constructed on site. Due to the proximity of the water, if approved, the structure should be earth-toned or neutral colors to have less visual impacts to the lake. Additionally, the vegetative buffer could be improved by planting a shoreline planting of native shrubs and trees in the original cabin location. The applicant is encouraged to reach out to Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District to discuss possible planting options favorable to this location. There is some disagreement regarding the legal access to the southern portion of the lot through the current driveway between the applicants and the neighbors to the south. This is a private matter to be settled between the property owners. However, it bears mentioning in the variance narrative for the Board of Adjustment to be aware of. Regardless of how that matter is settled, there is legal access to the building site from North Pike Lake Road from the main cabin. Criteria for evaluating the variance request is outlined in section 14.02D of the zoning ordinance with test questions on pages 8 and 9. Potential conditions to be considered if approved. 1, a septic permit shall be submitted in conjunction with or before the land use permit. Number 2, only vegetation necessary to facilitate construction or in accordance with firewise standards shall be removed. 3, the shoreline between the cabin and the lake should be revegetated to provide visual screening from the lake. And 4, the cabin shall be earth-toned or neutral in color. Our office sent out 10 letters of notification to adjacent property owners. At the time of this narrative, 2 comment letters were received. 1 comment in support from Greg Anderson and 1 comment opposed from Todd and Linda Hay. I also received 2 comment letters after the comment deadline, so those were not included with the applications. And then enclosed also is a memo on the septic permitting from Environmental Health.
Okay, thank you, Neva. At this point, we'll open it to the floor to anybody that represents this property. Okay. Yeah, step up to the microphone and state your name.
Hello, my name is Davina Hanson. I'm 159 North Pike Lake Road, and my husband.
I'm John Hanson, 159 North Pike Lake Road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments to add to the narrative at this point?
No, I just would underline that the practical difficulty really is in the unique shape of our property. which doesn't allow us to meet both the setbacks. We are totally aligned and in harmony with what Neva lined out for the conditions with regard to the vegetation. We would certainly respect that. And obviously work with Mitch and a septic installer designer to make sure that we have the septic in accordance there. The reason for that is just because of the distance betwixt the two cabins, so we agree to that.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I was out there a week and a half ago.
Oh, good.
Stayed at a cabin not far from yours, at 45. Is the water still that high?
No, it's actually gone down a bit.
It's gone down a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Way
Yeah,
down last year,
it was
though.
astonishing.
Yeah.
It was over the dock at the place I was at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some docks were flooded for sure.
Yeah, okay. All right, is there anybody else? I don't see anybody else, but just in case, is there anybody else that has any public comment on this project? Hearing none, I will close the comments. If we have questions, we'll direct them back to you. But at this point, it's to the board. Go ahead.
Well, I'm looking at the hand-drawn, it looks hand-drawn, that shows the North Pike Lake Road and where the proposed cabin is. And it says the cabin is to be located 25 feet from the water line. Is that correct?
That's correct. The deck would be the actual, would it? Yeah.
Okay. And tell me why it can't be built with the proper setback on Pike Lake.
If you see the shape of our property, we don't have, our property is wider than it is deep.
Right. But if it were located back further,
Do you have a location that you're
I
indicating?
think it was described in the narrative that there is no place on there where both setbacks can be managed.
but
So-
wouldn't we prefer the road setback to be smaller than the lake setback? Isn't that what we're here?
You may. I might take a look at it and say there might be a preference to shift it into one area or the other, depending on the other elements of that property. Where does it best fit to serve the purposes of the property?
Right.
And while there might be some locations that are unrelated, I don't see them, they're not marked and they're not identified. So I think we're left with saying, all right, what's the least violation of the rules that we're going to deal with?
Right.
Both are a problem, and I'm not sure that one is necessarily more so
I
than
have to
the other.
review what the setbacks are from the road. Is that 85 feet? It wouldn't be 85.
50.
50, yeah, I think it was stated as 50 in here.
And then from the lake shore, it's 100?
100-foot lake shore setback, 50 from the road setback.
Okay. But couldn't that be set? Because their property doesn't touch the road there, doesn't mean you can still get it 100 feet or 50 feet back from the road and meet the setback. And put the cabin further from the lake.
Where would you, I'm not sure where you're,
Well, I'm looking at the drawing.
I didn't see the
I
drawing.
mean, meet the road setback.
50 feet,
Yeah.
50 feet from the road, center line of the road. Would put the cabin
Oh, there it
considerably,
is, okay.
back considerably further.
Now, so where are you proposing that might,
Well, this is 100 feet from the center line of the
Right,
setback.
okay.
They only need 50. So they could put the cabin back. It's not 100 feet
so
from their
you'd wind up
property
with,
line.
you'd
It's
wind
a-
up with two separate structures?
No. There is no structure there. They took it down, or somebody took
Well,
it down.
there's no structure at all. Okay, I thought there might be something
There was an
incentive.
original cabin put there, but it was removed. Now
Okay.
they want to put a cabin.
Yep, I got,
I have a question for you. This overhead power line, or there's an overhead line coming into a pole. Does
Correct.
that terminate and go underground at that point, or does it continue towards your existing structure
so
overhead?
let's look at this.
It does continue over. That line, so that line is partly troublesome for locations for this structure also. So it's a secondary line that carries power to the neighbors west and then carries to our direct neighbor.
So it's not just going from the pole to your cabin, it continues on?
It doesn't even, that's
from-
not even our primary line. Our primary line is over by the
East,
primary
okay.
cabin.
Okay.
That
So
line
it
is.
stays overhead? That
Correct.
was the gist of my question.
Correct.
Okay.
And if I may, just for clarity purposes, the location that we're looking at from the previous cabin, that cabin was tore down, I think, 2 years ago. But that area is already cleared, which means we wouldn't have to do much more, I should say, clearing to accommodate a structure. The structure will be smaller. That original structure sat very close to the lake, as you can see, 10 feet. And we're taking measures to increase that by over twice that amount.
What of the previous structure exists on the site right now?
Just the foundation posts and the utility line that came from it
So
and the
this is
perimeter.
a compacted area right now?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, my inclination is to minimize the impact of anything new. And to me, it makes a little more sense to utilize an already impacted compressed area than it does to create a new one further back. We're not going to save the one up front without excessive involvement, in my opinion.
Well, number 4 of the questions is, has the property owner established that the practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner?
And I agree that they satisfied that, because the current site where the cabin had existed still seems to be the best place to put it. You could satisfy something, but you're going to sacrifice something else. And I'm in favor of reducing the impact of further development on the area by saying, keeping it where the previous had been and minimizing it from what the experience it had before. That's my opinion. Adam? Charlie? Mike?
I guess
Comments?
I would tend to agree with what you just said, is the existing previous site would be the least direct impact to the property as far as stormwater runoff and vegetation clearing. I mean, the site's already clear. And especially if we did, I don't know if that was a condition, I know it was a potential recommendation to add additional vegetation between the cabin and the structure where it's looking, really open. If they got some vegetation in there, that would really help shield it from the lake. I think it would be an overall improvement, other than just not having anything. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I agree with what
Okay.
both of you said.
Mike? Okay. Well, do we have a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions as listed.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the application with the restrictions that have been stated in there. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the issue?
Did we get the opposition, the letters that were opposing? Were there opposing?
There's just one, and it was
Just
included
one.
in the packet.
There was a comment, at least one that came in later, Neva?
There was two comments that were
There were,
received.
there were two, okay. And both of them were in favor?
I believe they were both in favor. I didn't include them in the record because they were received after the
Okay,
comment
okay.
deadline.
I recall reading one and it was,
The two letters that were included in the packet, there was one for and one against.
okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Any further discussion among the board? Hearing none, assume we're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye.
I'm going to oppose.
Oppose, same sign?
Yep.
Okay. It has been approved. You're good to go forward, and we're ready for the next item. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the project.
Thank you very much.
Last item, the Jack Morris appeal.
I'm gonna recuse myself from discussion and voting on this due to my work manages his properties.
Okay, I did discuss that ahead of this with Adam, and at this point, I have no reason not to honor that request. So we'll proceed to the question. Adam is excused for the moment, and we're looking at variance number 51-115-1115. No, wait, that's the wrong sheet there. Do it on my computer screen, but I can't do it in real paper.
Page 43 of the packet is where that starts.
Okay, page 4. All right, yeah, I did have that. All right, well, the appeal is before us. Neva, do you have Tim?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This actually is an interesting component of discussion and timely in the fact that it does tie in a bit with our vacation rental overall review of our licensing program and discussion that we'll be having over the course of the rest of this summer. Specifically, this request, and this is why this is in front of the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment hears from variances from the standards of the ordinances that we have, but they also hear from any appeals of determinations from staff with regards to those provisions that we might have. So this is a determination that we as a staff have made, and a property owner is challenging or trying to appeal that determination. So the determination that was made is referencing back to the definition of vacation rental. And so the vacation rental, and the one specific line to it, I said, well, basically, I'll read the whole definition. It means any home, cabin, condominium, or similar building that is advertised as or held out to be a place where sleeping quarters are furnished to the public on a nightly, weekly, or for less than a 30-day period of time, and is not a bed and breakfast, but excludes similarly prescribed premises which are managed by and regulated as a part of a hotel resort. So when we put that in, into the ordinance form, we were trying to determine what scope of vacation rentals do we want to actually regulate? What does the state of Minnesota regulate? What do we need to regulate? If you throw everything in to the hopper, you end up with more than 600 units. But we wanted to, just for logistics sake, and especially by doing a 3-year period, we wanted to narrow that down, but still be able to get a handle on all the operations that are out there. So there are a number of resorts that are out there that are owner-owned units, and then mostly are regulated or managed by the company. Bluefin Bay, specifically for this particular request, they manage all of the units except for these 3. Caribou Highlands, on the other hand, has dozens of owner-owned units that are not managed by the resort itself. Each of those units are not covered under that resort's state of Minnesota lodging license. Every single one of those individually owned units in those resorts have to get their own license from the state of Minnesota. So we determined back in, and you see my memo that's in there, back in 2001, when we did create the ordinance, we created what's called a vacation rental appeals panel, and we met in 2021 as that appeals panel to kind of review this over once it came to our attention about all of these. Specifically, we're looking at Caribou Highlands, is to what do we do with these self-managed units that are in these resorts, because the resorts have issues with them. They're not managed by the resort, so if somebody, a tenant, is in one of those units, they're having a problem, they can't go to the front desk and get their problems resolved, even though that expectation is there. They have to go to their own other specific management company. So it is a bit of a weird business model that we were contending with. So in 2021, we made the determination that because the Minnesota Department of Health recognizes those as not being part of the resort, and they require each individual their own licenses, that we ourselves as the county would also include them not as a part of the resort and require individual licenses. We made that determination in 2021, applied that, and got compliance from all the units in Caribou Highlands and other resorts that we've come across. This particular case, Mr. Morris is challenging that determination because he has 3 units in Bluefin Bay that are not managed by Bluefin Bay. They're managed by a different management company, and we applied the consistent determination that we had made in 2021 to this particular case. And we brought his appeal to the Vacation Rental Appeals Panel in accordance with the ordinance, and that appeals panel upheld that determination to be consistent with all of the other dozens of operations that are out there that are currently licensed. And so it's basically the position of the staff and that appeals panel that we just uphold our original determination that each individual unit requires a license. However, we are also willing to say, look, as we go forward and we're going to have our review of our entire licensing program, this is going to be one of those components of the discussion. So for tonight's purposes, we just would like to see a consistency in our determination, because if it's overrode by the Board of Adjustment, then we would have to contend with the dozens of other similar operations in Caribou Highlands and other resorts that have already complied with this provision. So we do recognize the fact that it does involve additional discussions, but we want to have those discussions as we're going through our review program and not necessarily as a part of tonight's determination. So we just respectfully and humbly request that you uphold our determination of both staff and of the appeals panel that met twice on this in 2 years and wanted to stick with that determination.
Thanks, Tim. Just to clarify, are we being asked to provide, as we do in our other cases, a final judgment, or are you asking us to give an opinion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good question. You, as this board, either uphold the determination of staff and this appeals panel, and it stands as it is.
Okay,
Or you can make the determination to overrule our original determinations.
Okay.
Which then would
Got that
affect
clarified.
all of the others.
All right, well, this is not open for public comment. There's no public to comment
From what I
anyhow.
read, the guy is he's not the only one in this situation.
Correct.
And so he's the only one being charged.
No.
No?
No, he's not. He's the only one so far that is not willing to comply. There are dozens of others in the very same situation that have already applied and
they
have
are
already gotten their
doing
license.
What we're asking him to do.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, it would appear that we're looking for a consensus of the community. Charlie?
Yeah, I don't see that he should be a lone outlier. If everyone else is complying, I don't see the argument.
Well, of course, I disagree, but these are already in resorts, commercial property that are resorts. And I get the fact that they're individually managed, whether by themselves or a management company. Can I ask what benefit they receive from having a Cook County license?
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mattenbacher, that's a question that we receive from anybody that has a vacation rental license. Well, what's my benefit for this? Well, it's not really, a license to operate is not really, you don't get this bucket of benefits. It's just the ability to go ahead and be able to operate for that. If you don't have the license, you are not to operate for that. So we require the license. And as I indicated, there's kind of two, we're at a, I don't want to say precipice here, but we're at a point where we are having and going to have this discussion, self-managed units in with this vacation rental review committee. This is going to be something that's going to be discussed in detail over the next few months as we go over this. We would just like to see the current determination that has affected dozens of people and have complied just could be consistent over the last 3 years with this, and then that may or may not change from this year going forward. But that's where we're going to have that discussion, taking into consideration the exact point that you are just making now.
Because I've seen the, press saying that there's been a resounding increase in vacation rentals. And then I see information that it's down to 260, about a third of the vacation rentals are no longer doing it. How many of these are within a resort that rents properties that are being licensed individually? Is there a number? 100?
There's not 100. Well, it really, the whole thing depends on the definition. So whether it's in a resort complex or not a resort complex, the whole distinction within the resort complex is whether it's managed by the resort or not.
Correct.
The Minnesota Department of Health makes that distinction. They individually license each of those operations themselves.
Right.
What benefit do they get from that? They get to operate by virtue of having the state license. So there is a distinction already from a statewide level between those operations that are, they're all part of the resort complexes. Some are managed by the resorts and some are not. And no, it's not hundreds, it's dozens.
But Caribou Highlands has 16, Bluefin, I don't know how many.
In Bluefin, it's only those three.
And Woodson Resort, the Sea Villas has another management company. I mean,
Right.
are those being, you're saying 600. How many vacation rental licenses did we issue this year?
See, and there's a lot of confusion out there because of a lot of the social media and a lot of the aspects that are out there,
Right.
because there have been different distinctions. And I've done a presentation to the board, our initial assessment, looking at every operation that you could conceivably put into a huge umbrella of under the vacation rental or short-term rental is in excess of 600, but by virtue of the fact that we narrow our definition down, when we first put our proposal out to take a look at these, we were in the 300s then because of our definition. When we finally settled in, and looking at the license that we've issued over the last few years, we're at about between 250 and 300, in that range right there. And that is, it really does depend on your definition. And that definition is going to be one of those that's going to be widely discussed during this review process.
Mm-hmm.
The original point of when we were doing these was, of course, the adverse impacts between residential areas. And it was considered that really resorts, there's, it's zoned resort commercial. There's an increased level of activity, so you didn't really have that conflicting use aspect that you do, say, on the,
But if we're
Cascade Beach Road.
about 600 Cook County vacation home rentals. That's I mean, we've heard it, it was included twice in letters from, all this talk about the vacation Airbnbs, all that talk. And that's a negative connotation, and, information about 600, and there's really 250, and they're declining. What is it?
See, and it's the definition. How do you define it? If you had it for everything, as I say again, if you had it open to everything, which includes all of the self-owned units inside of the resorts, it is in excess of 600. But that is the broadest definition that you can possibly have. We wanted to bring it to what a more reasonable or expected definition would be, and that's why we have the number down to between 250 and 300.
Okay. But I'm not understanding. So we want to, this fellow wants to not have a Cook County license,
Correct.
but he's included in that 600, but he's not licensed.
He is included in what we would consider that 250 to 300.
Says here he's the only one. He says he's the only one being done, this is only, he's being.
He is the only one inside of the Bluefin Bay Resort Complex. His situation exactly matches the dozens of those that are inside the Caribou Highland Complex. So the situation is exactly the same. Everybody else has been required to get a license, and everybody else has complied. This individual is the only one, and happens to be the only 3 inside the Bluefin Bay Complex that is in that situation and feels they want to be treated differently.
Okay.
I think I'm asking what you just said, but I just want to hear it one more time. All of the other Bluefin owners are managed directly by Bluefin, other than these 3 units.
That is correct.
Cascade Vacation Rentals, are they actually a resort, or are they all vacation rentals? Are they all those units licensed? I mean, that's a lot.
I would predict they are.
So he's,
Right here.
I don't think he's got a, he chose to go this route and be, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
It's basically a business model that they have out there that puts us in this situation of having to interpret it. We interpret it as an appeals panel in 2021 and have been consistent with that, and that's been consistently applied to all of the other operations. This is the only individual that fits the exact same situation that wants to be treated differently.
What is the ask of the appeal? Just
The ask of the appeal basically is, we have a determination, we've been consistent with that determination. This individual is requesting that this board overrides that determination and changes it so that this individual does not have to get the licenses. If that is the case, and that is the decision of this board, that impacts the dozens of others that have already gotten them, we would be looking at, then do we have to refund everybody because we have to be consistent?
So just to be sure, by denying his appeal, we are saying that he needs to comply with staff's decision.
Staff's decision and the appeals panel decision, which includes commissioners and other departments.
I would make a motion to deny.
I'd second it.
Moved and seconded to deny the request of the petitioner, is that correct?
To deny the appeal.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'll assume we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the denial signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Unanimous. That's it. At this point, what's the next word?
I move we adjourn.
Move we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?